Hi, I'm Sara Fade of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode in our History Bites series. Today we will discuss the Pony Express, which was used to transport mail between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California. In the mid-19th century, California-bound mail had to either be taken overland by a 25-day stagecoach or spend months inside a ship during a long sea voyage. The Pony Express, meanwhile, had an average delivery time of just 10 days. To achieve this remarkable speed, the Central Overland California and Pikes Peak Express Company, led by company owners William H. Russell, William B. Waddell, and Alexander Majors, set up a string of nearly 200 relief stations across what is now Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, and California to carry mail across the country. Later, it became known as the Pony Express, and lone horsemen would ride between stations at breakneck pace, switching horses every 10 to 15 miles, and then handing their cargo off to a new courier after 75 to 100 miles. The relay system allowed mail to crisscross the frontier in record time. The company's personal best came in March of 1861 when riders carried the inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln from Nebraska to California in just 7 days and 17 hours. Since speed was its main goal, the Pony Express went to great lengths to keep its horses' loads as light as possible. Rather than burly cowboys, most of the riders were small, wiry men who weighed between 100 and 125 pounds, roughly the same size as a modern horse racing jockey. Their average age was around 20, but it wasn't unusual for teenagers as young as 14 to be hired. One man named Bronco Charlie Miller claimed he was only 11 years old when he first joined the Pony Express. To cut down on weight and facilitate swift horse and rider changes, the Pony Express used a special type of mail bag known as mochila, the Spanish word for knapsack. This consisted of a leather cover that was draped over the saddle and held in place by the rider's weight. It featured 4 padlocked pockets, 3 for mail and 1 for the rider's time card, and was capable of holding up to 20 pounds of cargo. At each relief station, riders would simply grab the mochila off one mount and then throw it over the next, allowing them to switch horses in the span of just 2 minutes. In exchange for their $100 to $150 monthly salaries, a substantial sum for the time, Pony Express riders were expected to take a loyalty oath that read, "I do hereby swear, before the great and living God, that during my engagement and while an employee of Russell, Majors, and Waddell, I will, under no circumstances, use profane language, that I will drink no intoxicating liquors, that I will not quarrel or fight with any other employee of the firm, and that in every respect I will conduct myself honestly, be faithful to my duties, and so direct all my acts as to win the confidence of my employers, so help me God." Those who broke the rules risked being dismissed without pay, but it appears that few Pony Express employees followed the pledge to the letter. Liquor flowed freely at relief stations, and an eyewitness named Richard Burton reported that he scarcely ever saw a sober rider. Greeted with great fanfare and excitement, the first ride of the Pony Express on April 3rd of 1860 was reported by newspapers across the country. The first mochila of mail included a letter from President Buchanan to Governor John Downey of California congratulating him on the Pony Express. 40 riders participated in the Express's first sprint across the country, which ended in downtown Sacramento at 5:45 p.m. on April 13th, exactly 10 days after the first rider had left St. Joseph. The festive welcome in Sacramento, which featured bands playing bells, ringing, and people standing on balconies and rooftops waving flags, singing and shouting, was repeated hours later in San Francisco after the mail was conveyed to its final destination by the large side-wheeler steamboat Antelope. With the historic first ride, the Pony Express fulfilled its promise to get the mail from St. Joseph to San Francisco in only 10 days. Never before in history had letters been delivered over such a distance so quickly. In May 1860, Robert Pony Bob Haslam took off on the most legendary ride in Pony Express history. The 20-year-old was scheduled to make his usual 75-mile run from Friday Station east to Buckland Station in Nevada. Upon arriving at Buckland, however, he found that his relief rider was petrified of the Paiute Indians who had been attacking stations along the route. When the other man refused to take the mail, Haslam jumped back in the saddle and rode on, eventually completing a 190-mile run before delivering his mochila at Smith's Creek. After a brief rest, he mounted a fresh horse and retraced his steps all the way back to Friday Station, at one point passing a relay outpost that had been burned by the Paiutes. By the time he finally returned to his home station, Pony Bob had traveled 380 miles in less than 40 hours, a Pony Express record. Believe it or not, the riders weren't the ones who had the most dangerous jobs. Pony Express riders had to deal with extreme weather conditions, harsh terrain, and the threat of attacks by bandits and Indians. But life may have been even more dangerous for the stock keepers who manned the relief stations. Their outposts were usually crude, dirt floor huts equipped with little more than sleeping quarters and corrals for the horses. Many were located in remote sections of the frontier, making them extremely vulnerable to ambush. Accounts differ, but Indians reportedly attacked or burned several relay stations during the Pyramid Lake War in the summer of 1860, killing as many as 16 stock hands. By contrast, only a handful of riders, 6, according to the National Park Service, died in the line of duty during the entire history of the Pony Express. On June 16th of 1860, about 10 weeks after the Pony Express began operations, Congress authorized a bill to subsidize a transcontinental telegraph line to connect the Missouri River and the Pacific Coast. This resulted in the incorporation of the Overland Telegraph Company of California and the Pacific Telegraph Company of Nebraska. While the telegraph lines were under construction, the Pony Express operated as usual. Letters and newspapers traveled the entire length of the line from St. Joseph to Sacramento. The telegrams went only between the rapidly advancing wire ends. Many factors other than the telegraph also contributed to the downfall of the Pony Express. Its parent company had a relentlessly deteriorating financial condition. Shortly before the Pony Express service started, Russell, Majors, and Waddell had lost a great deal of money when a huge herd of oxen pulling supply wagons froze to death in the raging blizzard at Ruby Valley, Nevada. The Pyramid Lake War in the spring and summer of 1860 was another substantial blow to the company. Bands of the Paiute, Shoshone, Bannock, and Gasudi and other peoples burned many stations to the ground, killing many station keepers and stole horses and equipment. The company could ill afford the $75,000 required to replace these assets or the cost of replacing the horses lost to the weather during the awful winter of 1860 and 1861. Internal dissension among the company's executives further debilitated the disintegrating organization. Still another cause for the Pony Express's failure was the lack of support by the general public, which simply found sending mail via Pony Express too expensive at $5 an ounce, the equivalent of hundreds of dollars in the 21st century. Even when the rate was later reduced to $1 per ounce, the average citizen could not afford to send a letter by Pony Express. Instead, the service was used mostly by government, newspapers, and businesses. In the end, the company's income did not meet its basic expenses, which are about $1,000 per day. Its total costs were $700,000. Its total receipts were about $500,000. It was on October 24th, 1861, that San Francisco was in direct contact with New York City when Western Union completed the transcontinental telegraph line at Salt Lake City. the Pony Express was officially terminated. In November of 1861, the last Pony Express letters completed their journey. Despite operating for only 19 months, its riders had successfully delivered some 35,000 pieces of mail and traveled more than 500,000 miles across the American frontier. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched on YouTube, please hit subscribe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.